Beekeeping: The Techniques, Benefits, and Drawbacks of Beekeeping Explained by Sarah Jacobs. Narrated by Mark Milroy. Chapter 1. The Benefits and Drawbacks of Beekeeping. Almost anyone can master the abilities that are necessary to be a really good beekeeper. Your journey to successful beekeeping starts with the preparation. You should try to understand everything you can about beehives before your bees arrive. Here are some things to consider about beekeeping. Pros to beekeeping. There are several reasons why you may wish to raise honeybees, including: honey is probably the apparent answer. Most beekeepers want to produce fresh honey. A single bee can produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her life, about 6 weeks, and with a group including thousands of bees, that can build up rapidly. Beeswax is another well-known product that comes from bees. Worker honeybees produce wax from special glands on their abdomen. The beeswax is formed into honeycomb and becomes the structure of their home. We use beeswax also. It's used in candle making and cosmetics. Many creams and lipsticks contain beeswax. Pollination. If you really want better yield from your groves and gardens, honeybees can help. Raising honeybees makes sure better pollination of blooming plants. That means more food for ourselves and wildlife. Honeybees are the heroes of pollination efforts for modern agriculture. Having said that, the role of native bee species can't be ignored. Diligent workers. There's a reason we say busy as a bee. Bees are consistent workers. They don't need constant tracking. A group of healthy, well-managed bees will produce wax and honey which you can make use of later or sell for profit. On average, expect to spend an hour a week throughout the warm season on group management. Keep in mind that in chillier climates, you might really need to help bees overwinter appropriately. Challenges to beekeeping. There are some downsides to raising honeybees, though. Non-natives. While we actually do manage honeybees for honey and pollination, there's some concern that honeybees are outcompeting our native bees in the wild. Honeybees are non-natives. Wild, singular bees are the super pollinators of our native flowers and plants. If you're getting bees to pollinate your food, not to produce honey, think of using a solitary bee house and encourage native plants and wildflowers. Stings can happen with honeybees. Contact your medical professional first to identify if you are one of the unfortunate people who are allergic to honeybee stings. And even if you aren't allergic to it, stings are painful. Learning how to properly manage your hives will minimize stinging episodes. Cost of supplies. The preliminary cost of beekeeping can be intimidating to newbie beekeepers. You'll need to purchase supplies such as a hive, appropriate protecting clothing, a smoker, and a hive tool. At the time of this writing, a single new hive may cost about $150, clothes and gear may cost about $160, and a plan of new bees may run $125 to $150. Typically, you can find starter kits with bees, boxes, and equipment for a better combined price. The first year can be a tough one. On top of learning the ins and outs of beekeeping, you might not get any honey for yourself. Your bees have a lot of work to do during the first season. They should produce wax, raise young bees, and store honey for winter. Learn to be patient with yourself and your bees. Bee illnesses. As you might know, bee populations have been in decrease for several years. Illness, pesticides, and parasites are the most common problems come across by bees, but at times there is no clarification for an unhealthy hive. Take the time to learn how to keep your bees healthy and to inquire about any problems other beekeepers in your specific area may have had. Join a beekeeping neighborhood. Be sure to speak with regional beekeepers and beekeeping companies or the communities in your area. They typically meet at public libraries. It is always a great idea to go out with a specialist several times before raising your own bees. There are a lot of companies about beekeeping readily available to those ready to look. Those organizations are particularly useful for finding swarms, collections of bees, as soon as you've become developed with your apiary. Chapter 2. Bee Stings Prevention. An important consideration when it comes to bees is that they truly don't want to sting you. It suggests that you need to somehow provoke a bee to make it sting you. Unfortunately, in some cases, this happens accidentally. Lots of us have made the mistake of stepping on a bee or gone too near a beehive without appropriate safety measure. You can generally prevent a sting by just leaving them alone. Standing still while a bee flies around, you can be an effective way to stop pain for you both. And even if one of the stinging pests arrive on you, it will probably fly off by itself with time. Bees at times react to certain odors that perfumes or colognes carry. If you know you are going into a region that generally has them, keep your aroma neutral. Bright colors can also attract other bees. Be certain to wear shoes outdoors so as not to unintentionally step on a stinging insect. How often do bees or wasps sting? Honeybees can only sting one time because their stingers have barbed edges, though the stinger will continually release venom once it is in you, so you should try to remove it immediately. Bumblebees, on the other hand, have smooth stingers and can sting more than just once. Having said that, they have the tendency to have calmer characters than honeybees, which is exactly why many people think of them as safe. Wasps can likewise sting more than once. Yellowcoats are an especially aggressive kind of wasp, and they can also sting several times. Hornets are also simply another name for a kind of wasp. It is regular for you to experience swelling, reddening, a sharp pain that develops into a dull pain, and itching with these stings. If you have other problems like a headache, seek medical attention. How to treat a bee sting. If you have a history of severe bee sting reactions or responses to other bug stings, call emergency health services. If the bee stinger is still present, remove it immediately. Gently scrape the skin with a credit card, your thumbnail, or a blunt knife. Do not take out the stinger or pinch the stinger with your fingers or tweezers. This will only release more venom into the skin. After the stinger is relieved out with the credit card, apply ice or ice bags to restrict the capillaries, reduce swelling, and reduce the pain. Despite the fact that the area may end up being itchy, try not to scratch it. Dirt or other microbes from the surface of the skin could enter the sting and trigger an infection. It's better to clean the area with soap and water and use hydrocortisone cream or a mixture of baking soda and water, which will help with the itching and pain. If no other treatment is readily available, use a slice of onion to the spot and hold it for a minute or so. Remember that bees and wasps can also be very helpful to your garden. Bees are most responsible for pollination, and wasps eat many other bugs like tomato hornworms. In case you feel you can exist together with bees, here are tips for attracting them to your garden. Preventing bee and wasp stings is really all about comprehending the pests. Chapter 3. Harvesting Honey. Is there anything tastier than fresh local honey? As soon as you have got your honeybee colony developed, it's time to begin gathering your own supply of honey. Here are some pointers and things to consider. Collecting your own honey. Having an unlimited source of honey right in your backyard might sound glamorous, but many new beekeepers have impractical expectations relating to honey production. For instance, bees don't make honey year-round in most areas, and for a lot of us, it won't be until the second year that the bees have any excess honey to spare. In addition, the amount of honey that your colony produces depends on where they're located. If you live in an area without access to a lot of flowers throughout the spring, summer season, and fall, honey production may not be great enough for you to take a share. That being said, once the colony does start, the honey is well worth the wait. Through a rather industrious process, honeybees make honey from plant nectar. The resulting honey is stored in the hive and used throughout winter or drought as a food source for the hive. Luckily, bees work extremely hard and typically make more honey than they really need, which enables beekeepers to gather the excess. On average, a beekeeper can expect to yield about 50 pounds, 4.2 gallons of honey year after year from a healthy group in a fertile area. However, the amount can differ quite a bit from year to year and from area to place. Before visiting your beehive to collect honey, be prepared by having the proper clothing and equipment. If possible, go out with an experienced beekeeper sometimes first to master gathering honey. The bees know very well that their winter season survival depends on having a source of food, and they will not be specifically eager to give up the harvest. Remember this: never handle bees if there is a potential of you having an allergic reaction. It is always a great idea to have an EpiPen on hand too, just in case. Pointers for collecting honey. Be prepared and don't try to rush the honey harvesting process. Mild, calm movements, and not big overstated ones, will help keep the bees relaxed. Be sure that you are not wearing any fragrances, perfumes, aftershaves, etc., as this will attract curious bees to fly to you, making it harder to work. Collecting honeycomb from the hive. For honey production, beekeepers give additional hive boxes called honey supers to strong colonies. These boxes include frames of pre-formed honeycomb. After the bees have filled the honeycomb and sealed the comb with wax, it is prepared to be harvested. Remember not to take all of the honey from the hive. You don't want your bees to starve over winter. Take only the excess, or what is in the additional honey, incredibly. The simplest way to collect honey from a beehive is through the application of a fume board. A fume board looks similar to a regular telescoping top or outer hive cover, but the inside contains an absorbent material that is sprayed with a non-toxic resolution that the bees don't enjoy. Place the fume board on top of the full honey extremely you wish to harvest. After some minutes, the bees will move from the odor and leave the honey extremely, which lets you get rid of the box of honey with minimal disturbance. Beekeepers usually use a smoker to pacify the bee group. but using way too much during harvesting can impact the honey's taste. Extracting the honey. After getting rid of the honey super from the hive and bringing it to a location protected from bees, you can start the extraction process. A hot knife is used to cut the wax cappings off the cells of the honeycomb. These wax cappings can be used to make candle lights, so do not throw them away. Once the cappings have been gotten rid of, you can begin to separate the liquid honey from the comb. A honey extractor, either electric or manual, uses centrifugal force to separate the liquid honey from the comb without damaging the comb. That permits the beekeeper to reuse the frame of empty comb in the honey vary. Alternatively, the honey-filled comb can be cut out of the frame, crushed, and strained through cheesecloth. The resulting beeswax can be used for candles or other projects. After extraction or straining, the liquid honey is enabled to opt for several days in a closed container and is then all set to bottle. If you want your group to keep producing honey, you really need to keep the bees healthy. Chapter 4. Outfits, Supplies, and Equipment. First, we'll go over the right clothes for your beekeeping activities. Begin with the fundamentals of beekeeping clothing. Always have a veil for your face and wear clothing that will secure you from stings. Most styles of full beekeeping suits or beekeeping jackets are available for purchase from beekeeping supply companies. Those might be best for the novice. The typical cost for these can vary any place from $75 to $170. In a general sense, adhere to white or light colors and a loose-fitting jacket or suit. Some beekeepers pass up gloves so as to manipulate the inside of the hive better, though for a newbie, this is typically not suggested. You will want to wear clothing both that will secure you and that you do not mind getting stained. Bees will produce waste that appears as yellowish marks on your clothing, so you don't want to be wearing your finest attire. Safeguard your wrists and ankles. Tuck your pants into your socks and your shirt sleeves into your gloves. Wrap both your wrists and ankles with some type of band to secure your clothes in place. Regularly clean your beekeeping clothes. Bees release a scent when they sting to notify other bees of an opponent. By wearing formerly stung clothes, you are basically pleading to be stung. Beekeeping supplies and equipment. Besides the hives, there are 3 fundamental supplies you are always going to want to have when handling bees. Cigarette smoker. Smoke, if used properly and not exceedingly, will help to relax bees. A small smoker is fine for a number of hives. If you have 4 or more hives in your apiary, you might want a larger one. You want to produce cool, white smoke. To do so, you can acquire smoker fuel or utilize dry pine needles in your smoker. Hive tool. This is a gadget that is used like a lever to loosen up frames and boxes. Most beekeepers have more than one hive tool. Frame grips. Frame grips are mental pincher gadgets used by many new beekeepers. They make it easier to eliminate frames from the hive with one hand. A helpful tool to consider. Chapter 5. Tips for honey. Cuts, scrapes, scratches, burns, coughs, canker sores, heartburn, indigestion, diaper rash. Mostly small, but sometimes uncomfortable and always inconvenient, are pretty common incidents in most households. What to do? Some people just grab the honey. Since ancient times, Standard healers used honey for a wide array of medical purposes. A growing body of modern research validates their wisdom. Honey is even making inroads into mainstream scientific and veterinary practice, specifically for wound healing. Why honey heals. Honey has strong bactericidal properties, does not stay with healing tissue like bandages, does not cause allergic reactions, helps prevent scarring, and gets rid of debris from wounds. Germs have shown no resistance to its antibiotic properties. Scientists say it shows promise for dealing with MRSA and other antibiotic-resistant infections. Although they have found a lot of honey's healing properties and substances, researchers say they've only begun to understand the whats, hows, and whys of this intricate natural compound. For just one thing, it would be better to characterize honey as honeys. Each honey has its own unique constituent profile, depending on its geography and the flowers the bees checked out to gather nectar. Though all honeys tested have revealed strong healing potential, some honeys are better than others for dealing with a given condition. The majority of the so-called medical grade or medical honeys on the market are called Manuka honeys. Manuka honeys contain uncommonly high levels of antibacterial activity for reasons only partially understood. How honey heals. Bear in mind, before using honey, see a medical professional first for leak wounds. You may really need your tetanus shot upgraded. Deep wounds might need stitches, badly contaminated wounds, and hard-to-heal wounds. During your visit, ask about using medical honey for dealing with these and other wounds. For treating a cut or injury, including hard-to-heal or contaminated injuries, clean and pat dry the injured area, clean your hands well, and apply raw honey directly to the wound. You could also soak a strip of sterilized gauze in honey or purchase bandages already impregnated with medical honey. Use a sterile water-resistant tape to seal the wound. If the wound exudes, change the dressing periodically. Once it's started to dry, you can leave the dressing on for the entire day. For a sore throat or sores in your mouth, swirl a teaspoon or so of raw honey, which is around in your mouth several times a day. For efficient cough suppression, sip honey with lemon juice, or just sip a spoonful of raw honey as seems to be needed. For occasional mild heartburn or stomach upsets, drink a spoonful of raw honey from time to time. For burns, use medical-grade honey as directed above for cuts and other injuries. The honey may sting. If the pain continues or becomes more powerful, discontinue the honey treatment. Check out a health professional initially if your burn covers a big area or has led to charred skin. For diaper rash, integrate warm olive oil, beeswax, and honey and spread it over the area. Caution: do not feed honey to infants less than a year old. Some experts suggest withholding honey until 4 years old. Honey may include botulinum spores the child's digestive system is not mature enough to destroy. External honey applications, or for diaper rash or injuries, do not carry this risk. Which kind of honey to buy? Most honeys on grocery store racks have likely been pasteurized, warmed, and/or otherwise processed, which ruins some or most of their beneficial properties. Some honeys are also adulterated with other forms of sugar. For remedy purposes, try to find raw, unheated, unpasteurized, unprocessed honey, preferably one whose source you can vouch for, like a local beekeeper, or some brand names of commercial medical-grade honey. Medical honey, usually one of the Manuka honeys, is available online or in specialty stores in containers or in honey-impregnated dressings, creams, gels, and lotions. For regional honeys, specialists suggest the darker the better. Chapter 6. What to understand about bumblebees. Recently, I was at a beekeeper's place. There were so many bumblebees, and they moved so quickly from flower to flower searching for pollen and nectar that it was hard to get one to stand still long enough to get a good picture. They are quick workers and, because of their larger bodies, can carry larger loads. Are bumblebees good pollinators? Yes. Bumblebees are outstanding pollinators, far more effective pollinators than honeybees, in fact. They primarily forage for pollen instead of nectar and transfer more pollen to the pistils of the flowers they see. Many crops are well suited to natural pollination by bumblebees, including, but not limited to, cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, seed crops, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, melons, and squash. They are especially attracted to tube-shaped flowers. Female worker bees do the gathering of nectar and pollen. They perform a distinct service called buzz pollination by grabbing the pollen-producing part of the plant in their jaws and vibrating their wing muscles to loosen up trapped pollen. Bumblebees' wings beat more than 130 times per second. If you can get one to hold still long enough, look closely and you will notice the pollen basket, or corbicula, on its rear legs, where it stashes a load of pollen to return to the nest. Crops like tomatoes, peppers, berries, and cranberries bear better fruits if they are buzz-pollinated. The flowers on berries are enclosed, so it takes a bumblebee's long tongue to get to the plant's nectar. Which flowers attract bumblebees? Bumblebees have to work harder than ever to find food and shelter because of environment loss and the overuse of pesticides. To attract bumblebees and other native bee species, consider native plants like asters, coneflowers, echinacea, lupines, bee balm, and spring ephemerals. Still, bumblebees aren't picky. Anything that produces nectar and pollen works for them. If you plant even a little area or several containers with flowering plants, the bees will find them. Plan your garden to have a long season of flower. Bumblebees have the ability to fly in cooler temperatures and lower light conditions than other bees, making them amongst the first pollinators you'll see in the spring and the last ones flying in the fall. Unfortunately, this capability also makes them more vulnerable to agricultural pesticides and herbicides, which are normally sprayed in early morning and later in the day to stay away from hurting the honeybees that are active throughout the middle of the day. For spring, try planting crocuses, Virginia bluebells, lungwort, comfrey, hellebore, California poppies, columbine, low-growing phlox, or spring ephemerals. For early and late summer, plant coneflowers, sunflowers, black-eyed Susans, bee balm, gentian, larkspur, or tall phlox. For fall, when it gets harder to find nectar, try planting fall bloomers such as salvia, wild geranium, polyp, basil, chives, cilantro, and parsley. How do bumblebees fly? There are about 45 species of bumblebees, bombus, in the United States alone. Those big bees are round and fuzzy with short stubby wings. You have to really wonder how these huge round bees fly so well. A current study showed how the small wings keep the bees up. Bumblebees flap their wings back and forth instead of up and down. Apparently, bumblebees' wings are more similar to a helicopter propeller than an airplane. Do bumblebees make honey? Yes, but inadequate to be a source for human intake. Bumblebees make a small amount of honey, just enough to tide them over some days of bad weather. They can maintain about a week's worth of food in their bodies, so they really need to forage routinely to survive. Early blooming trees and shrubs, like fruit trees, pussy willows, and serviceberry, are especially needed to give the newly emerging queens some nutrition as they wake up and start their new colonies. The whole hive dies off in late fall, leaving just new, mated queens to begin new people in the spring. If even one new queen passes away, a whole potential colony will be lost. Regardless of the fact that they do not produce much honey, the pollination service that bumblebees supply is definitely worth much more than any amount of honey. Do bumblebees sting? Bumblebees rarely sting, though they're able. They are typically really docile. They do not form swarms like other communal bees, and they only sting when really provoked. Only female bumblebees have stingers. However, they're so good-natured that getting a female to sting you is a major undertaking. According to bumblebee.org, a bumblebee will even alert you before it stings. It will hold up a middle leg if it's frustrated by your presence, which means withdraw. They will really only end up being aggressive if you happen to be troubling their nest. Bumblebees can sting more than once. However, their sting does not have barbs and a stinger isn't left. Ever discovered how bumblebees just bumble around in the morning, moving slowly? Their teddy bear fur and their capability to manage body temperature level permits bumblebees to be out and about on cold mornings, but they can't fly until they have warmed up. At this point, they may even sit silently on your hand and let you gently pet their furry bodies. So, are bumblebees friendly? We can't talk to human-bee friendships, but bumblebees are a naturally social bee, living together in groups called people. Nests might include between 50 and 500 people, according to the National Wildlife Federation, whereas honeybee hives might have 50,000. Where do bumblebees live? Bumblebees have tiny nests between the size of a baseball and a softball. Unlike a honeybee hive, bumblebees normally nest close to the ground or even underground, in stone walls, under clumps of grass, or in hollow trees and stumps. Deserted mouse holes are a favorite since they come complete with a warm fur lining. Bumbles stay near to home. After foraging at numerous flowers, they carry their gathered pollen and nectar back to the nest to feed. Unlike honeybees, the bumblebee group dies in late fall. The queen, who rules the group, is the only member of a bumblebee group to make it through the winter. She hibernates during the winter season underground and begins a new colony in the spring. Do bumblebees sleep? Yes, obviously. Male bees will also sleep outside after they leave the nest, never ever to return. In some cases, it's the female who's caught outside the nest just because the temperature cooled so rapidly that she could not fly back. She'll wait until morning to bring her pollen back to the nest. Normally, you'd find resting bumblebees under flowers or perhaps inside them. Bee populations are in decrease. Are bumblebees in trouble too? Yes. Most bumblebees are noted as threatened, susceptible, or near threatened. Last year, the rusty-patched bumblebee, Bombus affinis, was the first bee noted as a threatened species in the continental United States, and it is thought to be extinct here in New Hampshire, the last recorded sighting of it remaining in 1993. According to the Department of Farming, the decline in bumblebee populations can be blamed on the 5 Ps: parasites, insects, pathogens, poor nutrition, and pesticides. How do I attract bumblebees to my backyard? If you notice a lack of bees in your yard, consider whether your area uses a lot of pesticides in their yards and gardens. You might have your answer. At minimum, try to eliminate pesticides from your garden. A group of insecticides called neonicotinoids have been revealed to have a terrible influence on all types of bees. It's a systemic insecticide that can come from pre-treated seeds or sprays applied to bedding plants. The chemical exists in each part of the treated plant: flowers, stems, leaves, etc. Buy organic when possible, or ask your local nursery to ensure that no systemics were used on the plants you are acquiring. To supply nesting sites, leave some part of your garden a little wild and brushy. Do not cut or rake there, and leave some plant stems standing over the winter season to give the new queens positions to hibernate and spots to establish new groups in the spring. Chapter 7: Diseases and Bee Pests. A really vital part of successful beekeeping deals with honeybee health. Learn more about the most common bee pests and diseases and how to manage them in your apiary. Nest Collapse Condition, CCD. During the winter of 2006, beekeepers started to report much bigger than typical losses of bee groups. Those groups would struggle unexpectedly, with most of the workers vanishing from the hive, leaving the queen and a handful of young bees to fend for themselves. This phenomenon became known as group collapse disorder. The possible reasons for CCD are still being discussed today. Investigators agree that the disorder stems from a combination of problems, but continue to search for a conclusive answer. Varroa mites. Varroa termites assault both adult and larval bees, feeding off the bees. This weakens the bees and eventually shortens their life expectancies. In fact, Varroa mites are the #1 killer of bees worldwide because of their ability to spread out bee infections and diseases. You can't stop your group from Varroa infection, but you can save your colony from failure. There are many approved mite treatments readily available for usage in the war against Varroa. From approved artificial substances to softer organic miticides, several treatment types are available. Apivar, Apilifebar, Apiguide, Hopguard, formic acid, and oxalic acid are just a few of the choices. Each kind of treatment has its benefits and drawbacks. Find the best method that fits your environment and your beekeeping philosophy. After this, keep track of the mite levels in your colony. If your hive needs treatment, do it as quickly as possible to reduce the infestation. Pesticides. Pesticides work at killing insect bugs, but bees, butterflies, and other beneficial pests are prone to a lot of the pesticides that our civilization depends upon as well. Regrettably, these pesticides in some cases end up in our soil and water, and the contamination is having a result on our pollinators. And the argument continues over the real extent of the impact of pesticides on bees. To protect your group from damage, stay away from using pesticides on flowers and crops that the bees might enter into contact with. Or, if pesticide is needed, stay away from using them when plants are in blossom. Also, be sure to read the pesticides labels and follow the given usage guidelines to stay away from unneeded bee deaths. American Foul Brood Disease, AFD. American foul brood is caused by the Penibacillus larvae germs, which kills the sealed broods of honeybees. This illness is highly contagious and can easily spread out throughout a hive and from one group to another. Spores from the bacteria can live in beekeeping equipment, such as frames and supers, for many years. For this reason, buying pre-owned equipment can be dangerous. There is currently no guaranteed cure for American foul brood, though antibiotics have been revealed to decrease the illness. Though, as a result of the perseverance of the bacteria, this is not a long-term solution. Some states require the destruction of contaminated people outright. If you presume that your colony has been infected, contact your state's apiary evaluation service for management guidance. Winterizing your bees. The amount of preparation needed for winter season depends on your climate. A strong, healthy group with proper winter food stores can endure the season without problem in most areas. Make sure that your groups are well fed before cold comes with adequate supermarket for your area. Close off the majority of the hive entrances to stay out cold drafts and mice. If you live in an area with bitter cold, you can cover your hives up for the winter season. Though, note that ventilation is extremely crucial for bees, even during winter season. This is where the local element of beekeeping plays a huge role. What type of winter season preparations do other beekeepers in your area use? Do they face problems with other diseases or pests? Consulting with them will be a big help in preventing issues with your own group. Chapter 8. Honeybees in the Garden. Honeybees supply a great service to farming. They pollinate more crops than any other insect, and without them, fruits and vegetables could not develop. Honeybees also offer other advantages. Man has been raising bees and collecting their honey for countless years. Beeswax, from which the honeycomb is made, is also harvested from beehives. The bee colony. Whether hidden in a hollow tree or kept in a beekeeper's wood hive, every colony of honeybees functions in the exact same way. A bee colony is comprised of 3 types of bees: workers, drones, and a queen. Worker bees. The majority of the bees in a hive are workers, sterilized females that can number in the tens of thousands. Young worker bees are called house bees. They build and maintain the hive, feed the young, make honey and wax, and tend to the queen. Older workers fly from the hive to gather nectar and pollen for food and for usage in making honey and wax. As a worker bee buzzes from flower to flower, she gathers nectar and stores it in a specialized stomach called a honey sac. She also picks up pollen in her fine hairs and combs it into pollen baskets in her back legs. Heavily laden, she finds the fastest course home, making a beeline for the hive. Drones. There are numerous drones in a colony. They are males that develop from unfertilized eggs, and their only job is to mate with the queen. Throughout the mating routine, the queen flies high into the air, nearly 30 feet above the hive. Up to 10 or more drones mate with the queen and then die. The queen returns with enough fertilization to lay eggs for years to come. The queen bee. There is only one queen in a hive, and she can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day, and may lay 1 million eggs in her lifetime. When a new queen is born, the old queen leaves the hive with about half of her workers to form a new group. When flowers are in blossom, bees work continuously from daybreak to sunset, collecting pollen and nectar and pollinating flowers in the process. To be as busy as a bee is to be busy undoubtedly. Chapter 9. Bee Races. This is a very fast, condensed description of some of the more popular honeybees for beekeeping. Brown bee. German first, mean, susceptible to AFB, American foul brood illness, EFB, European foul brood disease. Italian bees. Brought into the U.S. not long after 1859, initially from Italy. They are yellow bee races and vary in color from dark yellow to golden yellow and have 3 to 5 black bands. Behavior and characteristics. Normally not too gentle, but can be. They have a very strong personality to reproducing. People begin reproducing early in spring and maintain a very big brood area regardless of circulations in late fall. Italians have an average amount of swarming. Italians winter in strong people and have a high intake of food. Winter losses are high. Excellent wax contractors. They show a propensity to rob, which undoubtedly is a factor in the spread of bee diseases. Golden Queen is easily located. Carniolans. Initially part of the Austrian Alps and North Balkan Yugoslavia. Dark-colored, at times leather bands. Depends on pressure of the carniolan, as hybrid bee today. Behavior and attributes. Quietest and one of the most gentle races. Their rhythms of brood production is very high. They overwinter with little people and with small food intake. Brood rearing begins with first income of pollen and fast development occurs afterwards. They maintain a pretty big brood nest only if pollen remains sufficient. In fall, the population of the colony declines rapidly. Overwintering very well. Strong disposition to swarm, but this personality can be influenced by choice. No inclination to robbing. Use of propolis is little. Poor wax builders. Really hard to find queen. Work in cooler temperature levels. Caucasians. Initially from the high valleys of the main Caucasus mountain region. They have a shape and size similar to carniolans. It's hard to find a pure gray type. Most stress we have today have been imported to us from Russia throughout the 40s. Habits and characteristics. They are extremely gentle and calm on the combs. They are ardent brood producers and raise strong people. Their personality to swarm is weak. They are good users of propolis, overwintering very well. No inclination to robbing. Use of propolis is small. Poor wax contractors. Very challenging to locate queen. Work in cooler temperatures. Chapter 10. Controlling bees better. When it comes to handling bees, there are 3 times of the year that need different kinds of hive management: winter, early spring, and summertime. Each season is crucial to keeping a strong and healthy group and needs different bee management skills. Spring management. Spring is a crucial time of year for the bee group to grow and strengthen. Unique steps are needed to ensure that the colony will grow and prepare itself for the busy summer months. Sometime in early February, you will want to look at the bees. Make certain the colony is still healthy and has enough food. If food is running out, you may want to feed them some sugar syrup. February and March are good times to look at the queen bee and see if she will need replacing. You must order your queen around this time to guarantee delivery in April or May. As a guideline of thumb, it is a good idea to change the queen every other year. As springtime development, watch on the group to see how quick they're growing. Check about each 10 days. If the hive is getting full and 7 to 8 of the frames are covered with bees, you will want to add another brood chamber super. Finish up your bee illness treatments throughout the spring and make sure they end at the very least 30 days before the honey flow begins. For more info on diseases and treatment times, have a look at Lesson 15. Keep an eye out for swarming. Bees will swarm if they get too crowded. Bees will normally swarm after it has been cold out and a warm day all of a sudden appears. If your group is growing quick, you might want to also think of splitting the group into 2 separate colonies. This will need another queen to support the added colony. The most effective approach is to use a nuke. A nuke is a small hive where you will transport 2 frames of brood with bees on it from a very strong group along with 2 frames of honey. Do this during the middle of the day when the aggressive worker bees are out gathering nectar. Insert the 4 frames into the nuke along with a packaged queen bee. Seal the entrance and move at least a mile from the old hive location. Once the nuke is moved, you can open the entryway. After about 10 days, check to see if the bees have accepted the new queen. Then you can move the nuke back. This nuke will be used to change a queen that has gone bad, or can be used when you split a group to start another one. The nuke introduces the bees to the queen in a stable manner and makes it not as likely that when you place her into the new group that the existing bees will want to kill her. Honey circulation management. Management just prior and throughout the honey flow is important. This is the time when bees will need room to save honey, and timing is critical. The timing of the honey flow is totally dependent on where you live and the primary plant nectar sources. In Oregon, one of the major sources is the blackberry shrub, since there's an enormous abundance of it throughout Oregon. Once it starts blooming, you know the honey flow will start. 10 days to 2 weeks before the honey flow, or when the major nectar-producing plants start to bloom, add a honey super on top of the brood chamber. To keep the queen out of the honey super so she won't lay eggs, you have a number of alternatives. One is a queen excluder, which is a wire mesh that makes it impossible for the bigger queen to go through. Another option is to use 3 frames of plain foundation in the middle of the honey with drawn comb frames on the outside. A queen will always come near the middle of the incredibly when moving up, and if she sees the plain foundation, she will not lay eggs there. Watch on how full the honey incredibly gets, and add another incredibly if it begins to get full. The best technique is to add the honey supers even before the flow starts. It is better to have too much space for the bees to keep honey than to have them run out of room and trigger them to swarm. You can add 1 to 3 honey supers on top to provide sufficient room. It all depends upon how strong your colony is and how much honey you think they can produce. Always err on providing too much room. After the honey flow, which is typically sometime around the end of July in parts like western Oregon, you can remove the honey supers to collect the honey. Honey flow times can vary tremendously depending on location, and can even happen as late as August or September, depending on the kinds of plants in the area and when they flower. Winter management. If your bees are going to make it through the winter, they need to be well fed and protected against disease. The cold weather is when bee diseases are most widespread. The bees aren't able to leave the hive usually, so they're vulnerable to more illnesses. Below are some steps to help your bees make it through the winter season. Check to make sure your colony is strong enough to winter season. There should be a very good amount of bees covering at least 7 to 8 of the frames in the hive. If the colony isn't strong, you may want to join 2 weaker groups together. First of all, you are going to really need to kill the queen in one of the people. Next, position a newspaper between the suppers of each colony and insert an incredibly on top of the other with the paper in between. The bees will slowly bite through the papers and introduce one another gradually. This makes it easier on the bees and will more than likely not invoke issues with the 2 hives merging. Ensure they have enough sugar or honey stores. 35 to 50 pounds of honey is a very good general rule for a stable, healthy colony. The weather can also impact their food consumption. The cooler the weather, the more the bees will eat. If you aren't leaving the bees honey stores to eat over the winter season, use a pollen patty or hard candy called a candy board. You can even use dry sugar in some cases. Do not feed bees sugar water throughout the winter, because it will cause them to create waste in the hive since they cannot fly outside as a result of bad weather. That could prove fatal to the group. A pollen patty, which is a mixture of sugar syrup, white granulated sugar, soy flour, yeast, and bee pollen, is a really good form to feed them throughout the winter season. You combine these active ingredients and form them into a patty and insert into the hive. The bees will nibble on everything winter and get the nutrition and protein they need to survive the winter season. Early winter, around October, is when you want to do another round of illness control. Put on entrance reducers. The entrance reducers will keep out yellow jackets that want to rob the hive of food and will also help keep the cold out of the hive. Tilt hives a bit so that water falls off. Create an upper entryway in the hive by drilling a small hole. The hole will allow condensation and wetness to escape and keep the hive dry. From the beginning of October to February, don't bother the bees. This has been Beekeeping, the techniques, benefits, and drawbacks of beekeeping explained by Sarah Jacobs, narrated by Mark Milroy.